With the release of Innistrad Remastered, I thought it'd be a good time to take a look at one of my favorite archetypes, and that's Werewolves. And I have that deck tech coming right up. Welcome to Wizards Whimsy. I'm your host, Patrick. Today, we're going over one of my favorite tribes, and that's Werewolves. But before we get into that deck tech, let's take a look at the history of werewolves in Magic. Werewolves weren't always the transforming creatures that we know and love today in Magic the Gathering. Back in Legends, we saw lesser werewolf, and then in Homelands, we had greater werewolf. Now, those are two distinct creatures. They are werewolves, but they do not transform like we've come to know and love. In Innistrad, we saw our first transforming werewolves. And what's unique about those is that in order to have them transform, no spell could be cast in a turn. And all it would take to transform them back into their human form was to cast two spells in a turn. Now, when we jump ahead into the Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon, Shadows over Innistrad had the same type of werewolves where no spells cast, it transforms, and cast two spells, it transforms back. Eldritch Moon actually had a different mechanic for the werewolves because they were infused with Eldrazi's. So you actually had to pay a cost to transform them. And then you couldn't transform them back. In the latest iteration of Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, we saw a new mechanic, and that's the day-night mechanic. And it operates similar to how the earlier version did, where if no spell was cast, they would transform into their werewolves. And if two spells were cast, they would transform back. But this is only whenever it's the active player's turn. So the active player either doesn't cast any spells to transform them into werewolves, or they cast two spells to transform them back into their human form. The archetype of werewolves has struggled because of this mechanic of how they transform and how they transform back. So let's go ahead and get into our deck tech. And at the helm of this deck is a Naya creature that fits perfectly with the werewolves and what we're trying to do as far as playing aggro. What I mean by aggro is that we want our creatures coming in, we want them swinging, and we want to get them going as fast as we can, because that is the main goal of this, is to swing hard and swing fast. This deck is full of powerful creatures that have unique abilities, and we will go over some of the core pieces of this deck. And at the helm of this deck, we're using Samut, Voice of Dissent. Samut is a key creature for this deck. Not only does it give us our colors that we're looking for to be able to splash in the white for our removal and board wipes and protection, she also has the ability to give all of our creatures haste. And that is something that is very key, because when we drop our werewolves, especially when we're dropping our day and night werewolves, if it's nighttime, guess what? They come in on their night side and they're able to swing right away. And that's something that we want to be able to do, because we're trying to overwhelm our opponent or opponents, depending on whether you run this in a pod or if you run this as a dual commander. So let's go ahead and get into the deck a little bit. We're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the key cards. Now, the deck list is in the description below so that you can check out the entire deck list, but we will only be going over some of the key cards in the deck. The first card we want to talk about is Wolf. It is a 3-drop, 1 generic and 2 green, 2/2. It is a wolf. It has Intimidate. This creature can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or creatures that share a color with it. Other wolf and werewolf creatures you control get +1/+1. Non-human werewolves you control can't transform. So what's key about this is that once we have our werewolves on the field transformed in their more powerful selves, we don't want them transforming back just because our opponents play 2 spells. So this is one way that we can keep them transformed. One of the ways that we have to get werewolves onto the field is Wynota, Joiner of Forces. She is a 4-drop, 2 generic, a red and a white. She's a legendary creature, human warrior, 4/4. Whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn. Put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So we get some werewolves out, we have them transformed. If it's nighttime, it's going to work out great for us because hopefully we'll be flipping into some of our day-bound, night-bound werewolves. And they'll be human in the deck, they're human on the front side, so we will get to put them on the battlefield. But if it's night-bound, when we put them on the battlefield, they are transformed into their more powerful creature selves. So that is how we will get to get those creatures out. And with Emberwolf on the field, they will stay transformed. And of course, we'll get those ETBs that they have as well. One of our most powerful werewolves is Aetherdrift Caretaker. She's a 6-drop, 4 generic, and 2 green, human werewolf, 4/4. She has hexproof. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. Of course, on her nightbound side, she becomes Hollow Hinge Huntmaster. She has hexproof again. Other permanents you control have hexproof. So that means all of your permanents are now hexproof. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So you get to buff your entire field. That's why she is one of the key cards and one of the cards you want to have on the field because all your creatures will be getting that big buff. Getting 2 +1/+1 counters, it's going to make your creatures huge, and that way we can get in and hopefully get that win. Wanted to make sure to include Ill-Tempered Loner. Now this is a 4-drop, 2 generic, and 2 red human werewolf. Whenever Ill-Tempered Loner is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target. You can pay 1 in a red. Ill-Tempered Loner gets +2/+0 until end of turn. On his nightbound side, he is Howlpack Avenger. Whenever a permanent you control is dealt damage, Howlpack Avenger deals that much damage to any target. You can pay 1 in a red. Howlpack Avenger gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Now he's a 4/4 on the werewolf side. What's great about this, we don't have to fear of swinging at our opponents because any damage dealt to our creatures, we can just deal it to our opponent directly. So no matter what, we get to deal that damage. Now this is probably one of my favorite cards from the Shadows over Innistrad block. It is Silverfur Partisan. He's a 3-drop, 2 generic, and a green wolf warrior. He has trample. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control becomes the target of an instant or sorcery spell, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. With him on the field, all of our wolves or werewolves can replace themselves with a 2/2 body if they get targeted with removal. Gaia Reach Banded is a 3-drop, 2 generic, and a red. She is a 3/2. She has haste. She's pretty generic on the front side, just having haste, but it's her flip side. Whenever she becomes Vilden Pack Alpha, she's a 4/3. She has, whenever a werewolf you control enters, you may transform it. Whenever we put a werewolf that is pre-Midnight Hunt onto the battlefield, we can actually transform them onto their werewolf sides. So that's why we have this card in there. It's one way that we can have our other werewolves enter, transformed into their powerful selves. Now, Duskwatch Recruiter, he is made it into plenty of decks just because of his ability. He is a 2-drop, 1 generic, and a green human warrior werewolf. He is a 2/2. He has pay 3, 2 generic, and a green. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Whenever he transforms into Crowlin Hood Howler, he becomes a 3/3 with the ability of creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Now, I know when this next creature came out, it made a lot of people happy to have a commander werewolf that actually benefited the deck a little bit more than the previous one that they released. And Tovalar, Dire Overlord, is a 3-drop, 1 generic, a red, and a green. So he's 3 mana versus 5 mana. He's a 3/3. Whenever a wolf or a werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So this is a way that you can start getting cards into your hand It's something that, really benefits you having him on the field and getting in with some damage with one of your wolves or werewolves so that you can actually put cards back into your hand. He also has, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more wolves or werewolves, it becomes night. Then transform any number of human werewolves you control. Whenever he's transformed into Tovalar the Midnight Scourge, he's a 4/4 that has the same ability of whenever a wolf or a werewolf deals damage to an opponent, you draw a card. But he's also like a Keswick Wolf Run for wolves or werewolves. So you pay X and a red and a green. Target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X/+O and gains trample until end of turn. This is one way that we can beef up one of our other wolves or werewolves, especially if we know that they're going to get in and deal some damage. We get to boost that damage a little bit depending on how much mana we can sink into this. Because of all the creatures we have, we do want to, make sure that we can benefit the most that we can off of those creatures. So we're running Druid's Repository. It is a 3-drop, 1 generic, and 2 green enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, put a charge counter on Druid's Repository. Remove a charge counter from Druid's Repository. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Of course, this pairs very well with Aggravated Assault. This is a 3-drop, 2 generic red enchantment. It has pay 5, 3 generic, and 2 red. Untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Play this ability only any time you could play a sorcery. So with Druid's Repository out, Aggravated Assault, if we attack with 5 creatures, we'll generate that 5 mana. And then on that next main phase, we activate Aggravated Assault and do combat again. Now, if Wynoda's on the field, this is going to trigger. We'll get more activations. We'll put more counters onto Druid's Repository and rinse and repeat. And remember, all the creatures that come in with Wynoda have indestructible until end of turn. This is one way that we can win by swinging with the creatures that Wynoda put in because they are indestructible. So we generate that mana and we just keep swinging and keep swinging, and our opponents will block or not block. So unless all their stuff has indestructible, we'll actually end up overwhelming them by wiping their board out, and our creatures, being indestructible, will be able to continue to attack over and over again. So that is one of our win cons. That is kind of an infinite that we have in this deck. One of the ways that we can control the night-bound, day-bound mechanic is with the Celestus. It is a 3-drop legendary artifact. If it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as the Celestus enters the battlefield. It is also a mana rock, so you can tap and add 1 mana of any color. Or you can pay 3 and tap it, and if it's night, it becomes day. Otherwise, it becomes night. Activate only as a sorcery. Whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you gain 1 life. You may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. This is one way that we actually get to control the day and night cycle. So we want to make sure that we use this wisely and that we use it at the best time so that hopefully we have Wynoda out, we get to swing with a bunch of creatures, and we get to bring those creatures in transformed. Thanks for checking out this video. I hope you found it informative, and I have the complete deck list in the description below, so go ahead and make sure you check that out. Now, what's fun about this is that you can play this in a group setting where you're in a pod of 4 or more, or you can play it in Duel Commander, which is the 1v1 format for Commander. I know I didn't go over all of the cards. I thought it'd be great to just kind of keep it to the key cards and give you a little bit of history on the Werewolves of Magic the Gathering. So hopefully you like that. I definitely would like to hear some feedback from you on what you'd like to see more of. After Innistrad Remaster drops, the next set will be Aetherdrift. Now, I do have a vehicle commander deck, and I'd like you to take a guess at who that commander is. I'll give you a couple of hints on that. It is a 3-color commander. There is no green, and he costs 4 mana to get out. So go ahead and leave a comment down below if you'd like to see that deck, and also if you'd like to take a guess at who that commander is. Now, while you're there, go ahead and hit that like button and share button. And also take a look at some of those links on Amazon for any Magic products that you may be interested in. Now, if you do use any of those links, I do get a small commission if you make any purchases, and it is at no additional cost to you. So go ahead and check that out, and let me know what your thoughts are on what's coming out or anything like that. Love to have a conversation with you. And you need any help with any deck ideas, make sure to drop that in the comments as well. And until next time, keep slinging those spells.